My stepmom hid the estate's real worth, but I wasn't about to walk away empty-handed. Let me tell you about my experience with my stepmom after my dad passed. She tried to snatch up all his inheritance and leave me with absolutely nothing. When my dad died 5 years ago, I thought everything had been taken care of, maybe through a will or joint ownership of property. Back then, I was pretty naive and didn't suspect anything about her intentions. Although we weren't super close, our relationship was decent enough that I assumed she'd be fair about everything. But still, there was always this uneasy feeling, especially since she never offered any part of my dad's estate to me. A few weeks ago, I got hit with a revelation that left me reeling. Out of nowhere, my stepmom casually dropped the bomb that my dad never actually had a will, which was a shock to me. Not only that, but she hadn't filed for probate, and the house my dad bought before they were married was still solely in his name. And here's the kicker. Now she needed my help. She wanted me to sign away my rights to the house so she could sell it. She threw me an offer of $10,000, along with some lawyer-prepared papers, hinting that if we went to court over the estate, she would likely win and keep all the house's equity. She was pitching this deal as if she were being generous by giving me $10,000 just to keep things simple. But when I read the attached legal details, I got a different vibe. It seemed to suggest her claim might not be as ironclad as she wanted me to believe. After consulting with a few probate attorneys, I learned that because my dad's name is the only one on the deed, I'm legally entitled to half of the house. After covering all expenses and settling the remaining mortgage, my half will be worth around $80,000. With this information in hand, I confronted my stepmom, asking her why I was never informed about the house and the lack of a will. Suddenly, her story changed. She claimed that after they got married, they tried refinancing the house, but due to a bank error, her name wasn't added to the deed. They supposedly tried refinancing again in 2015, yet the issue still wasn't fixed. She said she had only recently realized her name wasn't on the deed, and if it had been, I wouldn't have any claim. But because it wasn't, I technically own half of it. Now I'm wrestling with whether it would be wrong for me to insist on my rightful half. The lack of transparency from her side and the manipulative tone of the lawyer's letter have eroded my trust in her. I also can't shake the resentment that she feels entitled to everything my dad owned, even though I'm his biological son with legal rights to his estate. What adds to this frustration is that she received a hefty life insurance payout and is financially well off. She's even building a luxurious oceanfront property where she plans to retire. She's 53, and it's not like she's struggling financially. On the other hand, I recognize that my anger and sense of being sidelined might be clouding my judgment. Maybe demanding my half would come off as greedy or stir up unnecessary family drama. But then again, this isn't just about the money. It's about fairness, honoring what would have been my dad's wishes even if he didn't leave a will, and making sure I'm not being taken advantage of. I've been trying to handle this with as much grace as possible, but it's really challenging. The thought of potentially going to court and legally fighting someone my dad loved feels exhausting and disheartening. Yet, I feel it's important to stand up for my rights and what's legally and morally right. As I think through this decision, I'm also preparing for any possible outcome. Whether it leads to a legal battle or a negotiated settlement, I need to be ready. Right now, I'm gathering all necessary documents, continuing consultations with legal experts, and bracing myself for the next steps. It's a lot to process, but I'm grateful for the support of friends and a few family members who understand as I work through these complex issues. This isn't just a legal fight. It's a journey towards some sense of justice in the wake of my father's passing. After our first confrontation, I began to suspect Mara was hiding more than just the house. If she kept quiet about that, what else could she be concealing? I hired a financial investigator to dig into Dad's finances and documents, hoping for some clarity. What we found was shocking. Mara had transferred several accounts and investment portfolios into her own name, and these weren't minor amounts. These funds had been set up long before she entered the picture. It was a revelation that shook me. I knew I couldn't keep quiet any longer. I needed answers. We met at a coffee shop, and I went straight to the point. I found out about the investment accounts, Mara. Why didn't you tell me? She looked caught off guard. Oh, those were just part of our retirement plans. Your dad wanted me to handle them. Handle them. These accounts were set up before you two even met. Now they're all in your name. I tried to keep calm, but frustration was boiling over. She gave a small shrug. I thought it was simpler this way. Simple for who? I asked. It looks like you're erasing me from Dad's legacy. The conversation was tense, ending without any real answers. Mara clearly wasn't interested in being transparent. I realized then that I'd likely need to take this to court if I wanted a fair share. Walking away, I felt a mix of anger and sadness. All I wanted was what was right, but here I was preparing to fight for it. Later, I met with my lawyer to go over the latest findings. Mara had overstepped by shifting assets into her name without proper legal transfer. This wasn't just a family dispute anymore. There were grounds for a serious case. Each new discovery added to the emotional toll. My lawyer reassured me we had a strong argument if this went to court, yet the thought of a full legal battle with Mara weighed heavily on me. I reached out to family members to explain what was happening, hoping they'd understand. Surprisingly, several relatives who had been neutral began to support me, finally seeing the full picture. It felt like a small victory. Then, about a week after our tense conversation, Mara sent me another offer through her lawyer, this time $20,000, double her original amount if I just sign away my rights. The letter hinted that if I refused, I could end up with nothing. It felt manipulative and cheap, and I wasn't about to be bullied. I immediately contacted my lawyer, and we set up a formal meeting. This time, her lawyer was there, too. We sat around a conference table, tension thick in the air. Can you explain why you think this offer is fair? I asked, keeping my voice steady. Her lawyer gave a small smile. We believe it's generous given the situation. It simplifies everything. Generous for who? This looks like a move to push me out of what's rightfully mine. Mara cut in. I'm just trying to avoid a long, drawn-out court case. This offer is more than reasonable. My lawyer responded, actually, considering the assets and the legal rights here, this offer falls short. It's an attempt to scare him into giving up his inheritance. Her lawyer tried to regain control. There's no guarantee your client would win in court. This offer avoids that risk. I leaned forward. I know my rights. I'm not backing down. We left without an agreement, but for the first time, I saw a hint of worry in Mara's expression. She knew I wouldn't just fold. After the meeting, I felt a renewed sense of purpose. Mara and her lawyer weren't going to scare me off. Reaching out to more family members, I filled them in on the situation. It felt like a small win to have their support. Now we're preparing for what could be a long legal fight. My lawyer and I have been gathering all the evidence, bank records, account transfers, and emails suggesting Mara's intentions. It's exhausting, but I know it's the right move. Thankfully, I'm not facing this alone. My best friend Alex has been there every step of the way, helping with documents and moral support. Sometimes we take a break just to relax and distract ourselves from the stress. My cousin Lily, supportive from day one, even found some of Dad's old files that could help the case. Their support has kept me going. Knowing I have people who believe in me makes a huge difference. There are days where the whole thing feels overwhelming, but each time I think of giving up, I remember Dad. He worked hard for everything he left behind. He wouldn't want me to back down. After the last tense meeting, I braced myself for a full legal battle. I expected weeks, maybe months, of waiting and preparing, but then something unexpected happened. A new letter arrived from Mara's lawyer, and this one had a different tone. She was now offering me half of the house, but nothing else, not the investment accounts, not the other assets. It was a huge change from her previous stance, where she was barely willing to offer me anything. At first, it felt like a win. But as I thought about it, questions began popping up. Why the sudden change? Was Mara scared of going to court? Was there something else she didn't want to come out? I decided to call my cousin Lily, who'd been by my side through all of this. She listened, then said, honestly, it sounds like she's nervous. Maybe she knows her case isn't strong. I nodded, though she couldn't see me over the phone. But why just the house? There are other assets involved, and it feels like she's hiding something. Lily paused. She might be hoping you'll take the house and leave everything else alone. Maybe she's afraid of what else a trial might dig up. Her perspective got me thinking. If Mara truly feared a court case, there could be more she wasn't telling me. I called up a few other relatives to see if they had any insights, but most didn't know much. Only my Aunt Linda, who'd stayed neutral for most of this, had some insight. I heard Mara's really worried about her reputation, Aunt Linda confided. She doesn't want people finding out about all this in court. It could damage how people see her. It all started to make sense. Mara's offer was a tactic, a way to settle quietly and avoid any further scrutiny. Still, I wasn't sure if I should settle for just the house or push for more. I wanted what was fair, but the idea of dragging this out in court was exhausting. So I met with my lawyer again to discuss my options. "What do you think?" I asked him. "Is it better to accept her offer or keep pushing?" He thought for a moment. "It really depends on what matters most to you. If you want to avoid court, the house is a good compromise. But if you feel strongly about the other assets, we have grounds to push for them, especially with the documentation we've gathered." It was a tough call, but after weighing everything, I decided to respond to her offer with conditions. I proposed that in addition to half of the house, I should also receive a portion of the other assets. It was a fair compromise, something that recognized my right to my father's legacy while giving her a way to avoid court. We sent the counteroffer and waited for her response. A few days later, her lawyer got back to us, saying Mara was open to negotiation. It was a small victory, a sign that she was feeling the pressure. Throughout all this, I leaned heavily on the support of my friends and family. Alex, my best friend, was incredible. He came over nearly every day to help me organize documents or just distract me when things got overwhelming. And Lily was, as always, by my side, pulling up old family records that might help my case. One night, while organizing papers with Alex, I vented my frustrations. "Sometimes I feel like just taking her offer and being done with it. This whole thing is wearing me down." Alex looked at me, his expression serious. "Remember why you started this. It's not just about the money. It's about getting what's right, what your dad wanted for you." He was right. Each time I considered giving in, I thought of Dad. He wanted me to stand up for myself and for what was fair. Over the next few weeks, negotiations continued, with Mara's team slowly showing more willingness to come to a fair agreement. But just when it seemed like things were moving in the right direction, another curveball came my way. Out of nowhere, Mara's lawyer requested a private meeting. Just me, Mara, and our lawyers. When the day came, I arrived prepared but unsure of what to expect. As soon as we were all seated, her lawyer cleared his throat and said, "Mara has an alternative proposal for you." Mara took a deep breath. "I'm willing to give you half of the house and an additional $30,000 from the other assets. I know things have been tense, but this way we can both move on without dragging things through court." I paused, considering her offer. It was more than she'd offered before, but still not a complete share of Dad's estate. I turned to my lawyer, and he gave me a subtle nod, encouraging me to hold my ground. "Mara, I appreciate the offer." I began, choosing my words carefully, "but this isn't just about avoiding court. This is about my father's legacy and what he wanted for both of us. Half of the house and a fair share of the assets would bring us to a real resolution." Mara's face tightened, and for a moment, I thought she was going to push back. But then, after a long silence, she nodded slowly. "Fine. Half the house and a reasonable portion of the other assets. I just want this to end." After that meeting, I felt a mixture of relief and resolve. We'd finally reached a fair agreement, and while it wasn't a perfect resolution, it honored what my dad would have wanted. With things settled, the weight of the past few months started to lift. I leaned on my friends and family to decompress and process everything. That night, Alex, Lily, and I got together for a small celebration, pizza, some old movies, and a much-needed break from all the legal drama. After months of stress, suspicion, and tough negotiations, the hardest part was over. I could now focus on something positive, honoring Dad's memory the way he would have wanted. The first thing I did was set up a scholarship fund in his name. This had been on my mind since the legal mess began, and it felt good to finally put it in motion. I reached out to a local school to set up the criteria and application process, naming it the John Cooper Memorial Scholarship Fund after my dad. I wanted the scholarship to go to students with academic talent and a passion for community service, values my dad had always believed in. When I met with the school's principal to iron out the details, it felt surreal. We decided that the scholarship would not only recognize academic achievement, but also go to students with strong character and a commitment to their communities. Establishing a committee, setting guidelines, it all felt like a meaningful way to turn my dad's legacy into something that would impact others. As for the assets I received, I decided to invest wisely. Working with a financial advisor, I set up a diversified portfolio to secure my future while also giving back to causes Dad would have cared about. My advisor, Karen, was fantastic. She explained everything clearly, guiding me through stocks, bonds, and other investments I knew little about. Now, I feel more confident in my financial future and am grateful that something meaningful can come from all this. The legal battle also brought my family closer together. Lily and I have become even closer, and we've started a new family tradition of monthly dinners. At our last dinner, we made spaghetti and garlic bread, a nostalgic nod to family gatherings from our childhood. We spent the evening reminiscing about old times and planning future get-togethers. It's comforting to rebuild family connections that had been strained during all the recent chaos. A few months after things settled, I took a trip to clear my head. I rented a small cottage in a quiet beach town, spent my days walking on the shore, reading and reflecting. It was exactly what I needed, a chance to reset and let go of the stress of the past year. During that trip, I met someone special. Her name is Emily, and we crossed paths at a cozy little cafe by the beach. We bonded over our shared love for mystery novels, and what started as a casual chat turned into a few days of exploring the town together, visiting local shops, and watching sunsets on the beach. Since then, we've kept in touch, and she's planning to visit soon. Meeting Emily felt like a sign that things were finally falling into place, and I'm excited to see where this new chapter leads. Reflecting on everything with Mara, I found a sense of closure. She reached out once, asking if we could talk. I hesitated, but in the end, I listened. She apologized, saying she regretted how things had turned out, but she was also facing financial trouble from all the legal fees. She asked if I could help her out financially, given everything that had happened. Hearing her ask for help, after everything she put me through, felt strange. Part of me wanted to help, but I realized that would mean overlooking the hurt and manipulation. I told her I couldn't help, and while it was hard, it felt right to draw that line. She needed to face the consequences of her actions, and I needed to protect myself. Talking things over with Lily and Alex afterward helped me process everything. They both agreed that standing my ground was the right thing. She made her choices, Alex said firmly. Now she has to live with them. With that final conversation behind me, I could fully embrace the new beginning in front of me. I'm planning a trip to Japan next spring, something I've dreamed of doing for years. I've already started learning basic Japanese and researching places to visit. It feels liberating to finally plan things for myself, free from the weight of unresolved issues. Looking back, this journey has taught me so much. I've learned the importance of standing up for myself, of drawing boundaries, and of honoring my father's legacy in ways that matter. I've also learned that forgiveness can bring peace, not by erasing the past, but by freeing yourself from it. I may not trust Mara fully again, but I've let go of the bitterness. Holding on to it only weighed me down, and I realized that by letting it go, I could focus on the things that truly matter. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for updates on future stories.